Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In my previous tank guide, I explained each defensive stat individually: defense, awareness, critical avoidance, deflect, hit points, and incoming damage reduction. But today I want to answer a different question. How do all these defensive stats actually work together when a boss attacks you? Once you understand this, you'll stop looking at your character sheet as a list of random percentages and start seeing how each defensive stat has a specific job. More importantly, you'll understand why experienced tanks don't chase a single stat. They build layers of defense. So let's jump in. Imagine a boss is about to hit you for 2 million damage. We will call this as the base damage from the boss. That entire hit doesn't go straight to your hit points. Instead, it has to pass through several defensive layers before it reaches your health bar. A simple way to visualize it is this: final damage is equal to boss damage plus defense plus awareness plus critical avoidance plus deflect and plus incoming damage reductions and blocking. Don't worry about memorizing the formula. The important part is understanding what each layer does. So the first layer is defense. Defense reduces the boss's base damage. This is why defense is considered the most important defensive stat. Every boss attack benefits from it. If your defense is capped, every hit you take starts much smaller than it otherwise would. Next comes awareness. Since the combat rework, boss encounters primarily benefit from combat advantage. That means bosses are always trying to deal 90% additional combat advantage damage. Your awareness directly encounters that bonus. For example, if boss combat advantage bonus is 90%, your awareness is 90%, remaining combat advantage bonus is 0%. Your awareness doesn't remove combat advantage itself. It removes the extra damage combat advantage would have added. That's why awareness is one of the second most important valuable defensive stat for every endgame tank. Now let's talk about critical avoidance. Bosses have approximately a 50% chance to land a critical hit or a critical strike. When they do, that critical hit has a 90% critical severity. Critical avoidance counters that bonus. For example, boss critical severity is 90%, your critical avoidance 90%, remaining critical bonus is at 0%. The boss still lands a critical hit, it just doesn't deal any additional critical damage. That's why critical avoidance smooths incoming damage so much. Without it, every other hit can feel significantly stronger. Next layer is deflect. Unlike the previous stats, deflect is chance-based or RNG. Sometimes it activates, sometimes it doesn't, or in other words, it can proc or doesn't proc. When it does activate, your deflect severity determines how much of the damage is reduced. Think of deflect as an occasional bonus layer protection. You should never rely on it, but when procs, it can make a noticeable difference. The final passive layer is called incoming damage reduction. On my paladin, my character sheet currently shows incoming damage minus 23.1%. That means whenever damage remains after all the previous defensive layers is reduced by another 23.1% before it reaches my hit points. This is why incoming damage reduction is such a powerful stat. It doesn't replace defense, it doesn't replace awareness, it doesn't replace critical avoidance, it multiplies with all of them. Finally, we have our shield. We call it the blocking is your last defense. I mentioned on my previous video that this is when you gain stamina and your shield block has an extra pool of hit points. If you time your block correctly, your shield reduces the remaining damage even further. That's why stamina management is so important. Your shield isn't meant to stay up all the time. It's meant to protect you from the attacks that matter the most, like Tombusters, for example. Okay guys, so an example. Hopefully I explain myself. Let's assume the commonly accepted PvE, which is player versus environment, boss values. Let's say, as I mentioned before, the boss's base damage is 2 million. Combat advantage bonus is a 90% plus. Critical severity is another 90% plus. When critical hit lands, yes, attack the critics. Since combat advantage and critical severity are separate damage bonuses, they multiply together. So, step 1, the base damage is 2 million. Step 2, combat advantage plus 90%, because I honestly don't know how much they have in the game. This would be 2 million plus 1.9%, each gonna be 3,800,000. Step 3, critical hit plus is another 90%. It's gonna be the 3,800,000 plus 1.9%. It's gonna be a total of 7,220,000 damage. So the final damage is that. If you had 0 defense, 0 awareness, and 0 critical avoidance, a boss attack with both combat advantages and a critical hit would increases from 2 million to 7 million. That's a 261% increase over the base hit. Now let's see what happens if you're properly geared. Suppose you have defense 90%, awareness 90%, critical avoidance 90%, then combat advantage bonus is 90%, minus 90% it's 0. Critical severity it's 90%, minus 90% it's 0. The boss still has combat advantage and still lands a critical hit, but both bonuses are completely neutralized. Now you're only mitigating the base damage of 2 million damage with defense, incoming damage reduction, deflect, and block. So a boss doesn't just try to hit you for 2 million damage. It's trying to hit you for over 7 million damage by adding combat advantage and critical damage. Critical severity. Awareness removes the combat advantage bonus. Critical avoidance removes the critical damage bonus, which is the critical severity after landing a critical hit. Only then do your other offensive or your defensive layers, defense, incoming damage reduction, deflect, and block, finish the job. Final thoughts. This is the biggest lesson I want you to remember from this video. Defense doesn't replace awareness. Awareness doesn't replace critical avoidance. Critical avoidance doesn't replace deflect. And none of them replace incoming damage reduction or proper blocking. Every one of these mechanics exists to counter a different part of the boss's damage, or at least the boss's base damage. The stronger each layer becomes, the less damage reaches your health bar. So the next time you're upgrading your gear, don't ask yourself which defensive stat is the best. Instead, ask yourself which defensive layer is my build missing. That's how experienced tanks evaluate their characters. I hope this video helped you better understand how Neverwinter defensive mechanics work together. If I did, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps support future tank guides and let me know you'd like to see more content like this. If you have questions or you'd like me to explain another Neverwinter mechanic, leave a comment below. I read as many comments as I can, and your feedback helps shape future videos. Thanks you all for watching, stay strong, protect your team, and I'll see you in Neverwinter.